Welcome back, and today's episode is the first one for the season 2. Today the topic is about data products, data flows, APIs, and so on. So the familiar topic of developer experience and APIs is included, but we will inject the concept with the data products. Before we go into the content itself, a reminder of the 100 Days DX site, which is still alive and kicking and getting a lot of hits. So it's used by a lot of people at the moment. Take a look at it and take advantage of the free material available on the site. Today's theme triangle contains APIs, developers, and data products, and how they relate to each other. And the topic and the session is more like an exploration of ideas and concepts rather than ready-made theories or thoroughly thought concepts, but it's an exploration to actually some kind of let myself loose for a moment and forget about the restrictions and just let it flow. But again, developers love well-designed APIs. Well-designed APIs actually love well-formed data as data products, and developers like well-formed data products because those are easy to consume and easy to understand. But let's go forward. Today, if you follow the media and you go to an events and stuff like that, you hear that you need to collect data, you need to have some kind of data lakes, you need to have data-driven decision making, and it's all about data, all the yada, the same stuff. I'll give you some the truth. Just collecting any kind of data doesn't actually make your company any more agile or data-driven or even generate more revenue or anything else. You're actually burning shitload of money. That's about it. If you're just collecting data to some kind of lakes or rivers or even oceans if you want. So what to do? Instead of just collecting the data, you need to do something with it. My suggestion is to treat the data as products, not one product, but multiple products. Refine, commoditize, and package it for internal and public consumption. So, and you're still burning shitload of money. That can't be avoided, but now you're doing it to make more money, if that's your goal. That's where we touch the concept of data product, and I haven't found any decent or even adequate definition of data product in the academic books yet, or even articles or anything else. Let's see if those comes up. But for the purpose of this session, I will give you my suggestion of the first laughing version of definition. But let's discuss the topic of product management, which is something that has to be taken into account when you're talking about data products. And if we start with the more commonly or more discussed topic of APIs and products, it hasn't been long since the most of the companies probably understood that product management has to be applied to APIs as well. So APIs have to be treated as products, and that's basically it. But now I've been involved in API business, API-driven business, API economy for years already, and now as part of my current job in Platform of Trust, I've been involved in data a lot, and I see that the same trend and same Same path is gonna happen probably with the data as well, and more specifically with the data products itself. So data as it is, it must be productized, even if it's used only internally, like you do productize your internal APIs, and let alone if it is if the data is intended for your partners, you productize the partner API as well. And naturally, if the data is offered to be consumed by anyone, basically, so as you do with your public APIs, same has to be done with the data itself. As you probably have noticed, the generic, we have it all kind of all included bloated APIs never became a success, but instead APIs that actually have a focus and they are compact solutions and they are built for a purpose, those actually won the game and still prosper and get the love of the developers and result to better results in any case. And as you know, applications, whatever those are, web applications or some kind of car applications or even mobile applications, whatever those are not built with one API, or rarely they are. Most commonly, they use plethora of APIs to actually create the user experience and the contents and everything for the end user itself. So in short, applications probably will not use one source of data either. So instead of applications to consume, instead the applications will consume multiple specific for purpose-built data products. Just like with the APIs. You have one API for login, you have one API for some content, you have one API for the web store card, you have one API for recommendations, and so on and so on and so on. Same is with the data itself and the data products. So what the hell is a data product? And as I mentioned, the academic world doesn't have any clear answer yet, and I haven't really found good articles even to reference, so I'm not gonna use those, but try to sketch some ideas that how at least I see in current job the data product itself. And it's a long one. It's a definition, and a boring academically sounding definition. It's a product, it's an item which is offered for sale. Okay, good. It's something that we can sell. We can sell to people. It's a commodity. It's made for actually the creation of data product costs us something, and thus it probably has some kind of price. Okay, the price depends on multiple things. Depends of the markets, the quality, and the marketing, and even from the segment that is targeted for. Each of the segments probably have different kind of pricing. Okay, each of the products, as usually, have some kind of life cycle when they are born, when they evolve, and when they actually are tossed away and replaced with something more efficient, even better, or something else. So they have a life cycle, so you need to manage the life cycle of the product as well, naturally. Here's nothing different from any kind of product itself, so it's a rather loose definition, which probably needs more refined version of it anyway, but let's see. Okay, data product, it has to be somehow relevant for the users who actually want to use it, and it needs to be communicated. The users really must know why they need it and what's the benefits of it, and data product naturally has to have a name, and the name is something you should really focus on, at least in the beginning, because that's something that actually sticks into your mind and sticks to the developers and consumers' mind. and it might become a brand. So it helps to stick out or stand out from the rest of the products and names in the marketplaces. And it should be actually adaptable. It shouldn't be something that it's usable only for a moment, but it should last, and that requires adaptability, so that you can actually use it more longer and still get the value out of it. Okay, that's basically not much said about the data product, but that's all I got today. Then another topic of APIs and data itself. So this is commonly faced situation that you have some kind of API, and it actually gives you some kind of response based on the query that you actually make to the API. Nothing specific about that. But now in this session we are focusing on data APIs and putting aside all the functional APIs which actually do something, some kind of operation for you instead of just returning data. But now we're focusing on the data APIs. Okay. On the right side, you can see that there's some kind of database, and there's got a system B in this case, and it has an API, and you can get data out of the API. And normally the word payload is set for the content that actually is returned from the API. The API has multiple endpoints which actually return different kind of payloads. The API economy, which has been discussed quite a lot recent years, that's happening around where the APIs are naturally, and the next hype word has been the data economy, and it's more focused on the payload segment of this value stream, if you can call it. But the API itself, I have a friend, Amancio Bouza, with whom I've had a lot of discussions, and he actually wrote a book together with Andrea, API product management, and he says that ultimately the API is only about the interface to the value proposition, not to the application. So this is close to what I'm actually speaking about in this presentation as well, because the API itself is a vessel to actually get to the core, to the value itself, which is in the data itself. So the more easier, the more developer friendly the API is, the more easily I as a developer can actually consume the value adding element, which is the payload. But in reality, as I said, applications are built on top of multiple APIs and multiple data sources and so on. And in this slide, you can see on the right side there's three systems, A, B, and C, and they have APIs, and each of these APIs and their endpoints create or generate some kind of payloads as a response. Well, let's say that all these systems are supposed to give me some kind of data of a building. Each of the system, by the way, has their own data model. So whatever the payload is, it's different probably from system A, B, and C. Everyone is different. And all these data models actually change in different schedules. So system A might be rather stable, and it's the data models are not changing like too rapidly, and they stick with their API versions as well. But system B is something that it's evolving all the time, so the data models are changing, and the API versioning is changing, and the system C is pretty much the one with similar to the B case, so changing all the time. All these changes actually and the different data models causes continuous chaos at the application adoption, what the developer has to do and keep up to date. And by the way, all the APIs in these different systems are designed differently, so you need to make a logic to actually operate with each of them separately at your API. In your application. Okay, all this even if all the system A, B, and C should just give me the CO2 levels in the rooms of one building. And as a developer, I'm in tears. This is just a disaster. The worst possible developer experience in the world. Okay, let's go back a little and let's see how all this, what I mentioned before, can be tied together into one drawing. Without mixing or bringing in the APIs, normally you if you want to use some kind of data or data set in applications, you have some kind of database and which actually creates some data, and each of the application has to make an integration directly, and that's how it can be in the slide is now. Each of the application builds the integration directly to the database or near to it anyway. You don't want to do that, and that's why the APIs, web-driven APIs, to enable the HTTP-driven access to the data were invented. And now you can have your database which actually creates data sets, but all the applications use the same API. So now it's a pretty more simple thing to actually accomplish, and more agile way to do it. And this looks good. This is how most of the API driven development and models actually work. The most simple way and most simple presentation. But then if you bring in the data products and data product thinking, you actually want to enrich the middle part of the value chain from bottom to top a little bit more. So at the bottom you still have some kind of systems, multiple systems. In this case, for example, each of them providing the CO2 levels of some room in one building, but they are still the separate ones, and they have the different APIs and different data models. So you probably want to have some kind of component which actually connects to the systems and then harmonizes the data. So harmonizing means that actually the CO2 information would always look as a data schema level similar regardless of the system below it, and that data is then part of the data product which is in the middle of the picture, and that the harmonized data is the payload of the data product. Of course, the data product itself contains a lot of other attributes which I'm not going to go through here, but there's plenty of those. For example, the legal stuff, and then the pricing models and SLAs and whatever. There's shitload of stuff. But it's important that the data is harmonized with this middle component, middle layer, middle service, which can be a platform, for example, and it creates the harmonized data streams for any of the consumers on the top. So probably you want some kind of marketplace for the data products where those can be found and purchased. And then you have one API, which serves the payload of the data products to any kind of applications requesting it. And in the top, you have possibly some internal data products only for your company's own purpose, and no one else can access that. Then you have the partner data products, which are given for your partner organizations, companies, and so on. And then you have public data products, which are available for everyone to consume. They might be there's some kind of paid plan possibly, and hopefully some kind of freemium layer for exploration and learning purposes. And then you might have some open data driven data products consumed by any application. And this is actually what the platform of trust does, plus a little thing, quite a lot of more, but in in brief, for the data products, that's the core of it, basically. But okay, data product management, how to do it is one of the questions, the big questions. What are the things that you need to take into account, and how should I start? Well, first of all, like with the APIs, you don't build an API just because. It has to have a reason and a purpose. Same with the data product. Think what kind of data someone internally or outside your organization might find valuable, and discuss with your clients, try to search the information, and then compare to that what you have in your databases and your systems and your data lakes and data oceans, data rivers, and so on. And you want to standardize the access to the data. Well, okay, API is the way to go now. So or basically the architectural models that are now used actually can consume APIs easily, and the developers love the APIs anyway if they are well designed. And in the example case, in the picture that I showed you previously, the API is standardized in the platform level, so accessing each of the data products with the same API is possible. And then you want to standardize the payload as the content of the data product itself, and as I mentioned, now it is harmonized by the platform, so you don't need to, as a developer, you don't need to adapt to different kind of native data schemas in the payload. You have one payload schema to adapt to, and that's it. Then you probably want to have some target group for the data product itself, and then you need to think about their business models, and then based on those actually make a fitting pricing model, and depends what kind of rights they actually have for the data itself. So you need to know your customer in business level as well. And when you're done with the version 1 data product, you need to constantly improve and learn of how the product is used, and is the product market fit optimum or not, and probably there's always something you can improve. And then there's loads of other stuff, but at least these 5 items came to my mind immediately. And based on that, I actually started to think about data product chart. So what kind of data products there can be. And I mentioned in one of the slides the having the internal data product and partner data product and public data product, and how they differentiate is the big question. I have adapted this model directly from the API classifications, and there's nothing different at the moment. So for example, open data driven data product, it is publicly available, listed everywhere basically. It can all the material needed to actually take into use is available immediately. It can have some kind of paid plans, but it can be free as well, and probably the content is licensed with some kind of open license. All right, easy. Then we have open data product, which is divided into 2. Public data product and partner data product, and all the same qualities, yes, maybe, and no. And lastly at the bottom is the internal use only or private use data products, which normally are not publicly available anywhere. You don't see the specs of it anywhere. There's no paid plan, and the content definitely most likely is not licensed anything openly. But again, so you should collect data in the lakes or whatever hype term you actually want to use here. Up to you how much you want to use that bullshit bingo. But then treat the data as products again. So refine and package it, and keep in mind that the data products are used internally and externally. So it might be a good advice to actually start to productize as it would be public at some point. So when you start building your first internal data product, assume every time that it will be available in some marketplace later. That actually makes your work a lot easier. So the theme of the session was APIs, developers, and data products, and hopefully you got some ideas. At least my thinking got clarified a little bit, and hope to see you next time. So that was enough with the data overflow, and let's start building data products.